Hello, welcome to Sunday class. Today we are having class on Contemporaries of Shakespeare. First of all, Sir Philip Sidney, 1554 1586. Spencer's Shepherd's Calendar is dedicated to Sir Philip Sidney. He had fluctuating relations with the Queen. Sidney was against her marriage with Duke of Anjou, and he had to leave court on this account and lived with his sister Mary Herbert, Countess of Pembroke, for a while. And during that time, he wrote Arcadia. As his funeral procession passed by, London crowds have cried out, "Farewell, the worthiest knight that lived." Spencer mourned his death in the pastoral elegy Astrophel. Philip Sidney's works were not published during his lifetime. He experimented with classical meters in English. A folio of his works appeared in 1598, and his major works include Astrophel and Stella, The Defense of Poesy. It is also known as The Defense of Poetry or An Apology for Poetry, and The Countess of Pembroke's Arcadia. So, first of all, Astrophel and Stella. It was probably composed in the 1580s. Astrophel and Stella. It is a sonnet sequence. It is an English sonnet sequence containing 108 sonnets and 11 songs. The name derives from the two Greek words. Aster means star and phil means lover, and the Latin word stella meaning star. Thus, Astrophel is a star lover and Stella is his star. Some have suggested that the love represented within the sequence may be a literal one, as Sidney evidently connects Astrophel to himself and Stella to Lady Penelope Duverx, afterward Lady Rich. Sidney and Lady Penelope had been betrothed when the latter was a child. For some reason, the match was broken off and Lady Penelope married Lord Rich. The Countess of Pembroke's Arcadia. It was first Renaissance imitations of John Lilly's Euphus. It was written for his sister Mary Herbert, Countess of Pembroke. Title and setting are taken from the 16th century Italian poet Jacopo Sannerazzo's Arcadia. The work is a romance that combines pastoral elements. William Shakespeare borrowed from it for the Gloucester subplot of King Lear. Parts of it were also dramatized by John Day and James Shirley. According to a widely told story, King Charles I quoted lines from the book as he mounted the scaffold to be executed. Samuel Richardson named the heroine of his first novel after Sidney's Pamela. Arcadia exists in two significantly different versions. Sidney wrote an early version, the Old Arcadia, during a stay at Mary Herbert's house, and this version is narrated in a straightforward, sequential manner. Later, Sidney began to revise the work on a more ambitious plan, with much more backstory about the prince and a much more complicated storyline with many more characters. The characters were Duke Basilius, his wife Gynecia, two daughters, Philoclea and Pamela, and their lovers, Pyrocles and Musidorus, respectively. Next is an apology for poetry. It is also known as a defense of poesy and the defense of poetry. Sidney wrote the defense before 1583. It is generally believed that he was at least partly motivated by Stephen Gosson, a former playwright who dedicated his attack on the English stage, The School of Abuse, to Sidney in 1579. The essence of his defense is that poetry, by combining the liveliness of history with the ethical focus of philosophy, is more effective than either history or philosophy in rousing its readers to virtue. The work also offers important comments on Edmund Spenser and the Elizabethan stage. An apology for poetry can be divided into 5 parts: the antiquity and universality of poetry, kinds of poetry, their usefulness, Sidney's reply to the current objections against poetry, discussion of the state of contemporary English poetry and drama, objection to tragicomedy and the violations of the unities, and remarks on style, diction, and versification. There are also some minor works of first Sir Philip Sidney. The Lady of May, this is one of Sidney's lesser known works, a masque written and performed for Queen Elizabeth in 1578 or 79. Then the Sidney Psalms. These English translations of the Psalms were completed in 1599 by Philip Sidney's sister Mary. Then telling about Gosson's School of Abuse, it was published in 1579. It was dedicated to Sidney. He called poets as pipers, jesters, and caterpillars of the Commonwealth. He denounced drama for pagan origins. And according to him, males playing female role is against nature. So that's all about Sir Philip Sidney. Next, we are moving on to another author named George Puttenham. He is probably the author of The Art of English Poesy, which was published in 1589. 3 books. Book 1 about poets and poetry. Book 2 about proportion. Book 3 about ornament. Book 1 gives a definition of poetry. It gives a major division of fiction, epic, tragedy, comedy, etc., and minor division of poems of praise, lamentation, marriage, etc. And book 2 concerns with the metrics, pattern, poems such as those written by George Herbert, anagrams and devices. Then book 3 deals with the figures of speech. Another author, Sir Walter Raleigh. He was a courtier, adventurer, poet, historian. He established the first English colony, Virginia, in America. And Walter Raleigh's work are his Ocean to Cynthia is dedicated to Elizabeth I. And he wrote a reply to Marlowe, the passionate shepherd, to his love, titled The Nymph's Reply to the Shepherd. And his poems are Epitaph on Sir Philip Sidney, of Spenser's Fairy Queen, to his mistress, etc. So that's all for today. There are more writers to be discussed that we will do in the next Sunday class. Thank you and happy Sunday.